So we're continuing with sculpture. Another way that you can create sculptures is through construction. So building your sculptures up with different materials. So things like found objects, steel, wood. You can see the sculpture that you see here is actually built up of dolls. Okay, at the bottom, and I think buttons and gemstones at the top. Okay, so you can use found objects, and that process is called construction. We then get kinetic art, which is moving art that actually moves. And I'll also add another video into the playlist where you can see how cool some of this kinetic art can be. Some of it is actually part of our land art, so it actually features on landscapes, on beaches, and things like that. New mediums. Okay, this is a big trend at the moment. Mary Sibanda actually did an exhibition. She's one of our South African artists, where she used virtual reality. So that kind of falls into this new media, experimenting with how things can be different because of technology. Installation art, so art that is actually installed by the artists in the workspace. So if you look at the artwork shown here, this artwork would have been built into that space by the artist. Assemblage, so this is kind of similar to your construction. So you're taking a whole bunch of found things and creating something new out of it. So the activity that's actually coming up is going to be surrounding this assemblage. Okay, so this is a fun project and it's something nice that you can actually do while you're off. Okay, you're going to take an old shoe and you are going to either change it into an insect or a machine. So you can use old toys, anything like that, and try to modify your shoe and create something that's completely different. So, for example, an insect, you can create a dragonfly, you can create a butterfly out of your shoe. If it's a machine, you can do a tank, a helicopter, okay, anything. Find pictures that you want to use. Don't just try and do it out of your head. It's going to be more difficult to do. You can add things. So you can add wire, tin, cardboard, anything like that. And then afterwards, you can spray it, and that will create a more cohesive image. Okay, so it'll create a sculpture that has a bit more depth, a bit more sophistication. Okay, last thing I think is looking at subject matter in artworks. So subject matter talks about what is in the artwork. What is it depicting? So what is shown in the artwork? And it's very handy when it comes to comparing different images. On page 44 in your textbook, there's a whole bunch of pictures there, and you need to go in and identify what each one is. Is it a portrait? Is it a figure study? Is it a still life? Is it a landscape? Is it an animal study? Religious, mythological, fantasy, politics, or abstraction? And if you don't know what those words mean, look them up. Okay, so do a little bit of research. Okay, so there's the answers for you. To A would be part of animal studies, B, politics or history, C, fantasy, D, figure studies, E, mythology, F, abstraction, G, religious works, H, landscapes, I, still life, and J, portraits. Okay, then we get different styles. So styles can talk about the way that things are done. And when we start moving into different art movements through grade 10 and 11, it becomes a bit easier to talk about styles because then we know what art movements we are talking about. So the main one here is naturalism. So naturalism, obviously what word do you recognize there? You would recognize natural. So things that look like they would in nature. It is faithful to the way that it actually appears. It is naturalism. Figurative means that things look like something else. So they are recognizable things. So for example, in this one, we have a recognizable face, even though it's strange, it is figurative. Okay, we've got a beak out the side here, but it is still figurative representation. Figurative leaf. Okay, so you can see different things, identify them, but they are not natural. They are not the way that they would look in real life. Abstract is when we don't recognize anything. So, like the last one we saw, a face. There's no face in this picture. There's no heart, there's no leaves, there's no things like that. So, the picture here is completely abstract. It is not decipherable in any way except maybe color and line. Expressionistic would be when the artist expresses themselves. So they add some kind of feelings to it. This picture here would show us feelings of anger or frustration. Okay, maybe this is how you're feeling in isolation. Okay, a bit of anger, a bit of fear. Stylization is distortion. So creating things that are in a specific way. Decoratives, usually patterns, okay, like wallpapers or wrapping paper that you would use, that would be considered decorative. Patterns on couches, towels. Okay, activity 1.1 on page 48. You are going to create a drawing of shoes that portray an emotion. So find some shoes that you like or dislike a lot. Maybe it's your school shoes because they remind you of being oppressed and they remind you that you can't do anything. You have to go to school, you have to live in the society that has these rules and these rigid things. So then you would take your school shoes and try to portray that feeling. You can use any medium or combinations of media. So you can paint, you can draw, you can use oil pastels, anything that you want. Just try to create that emotion attached to those shoes. Okay, function, contextual influences, and meaning or interpretation. So this is the part here that is really going to be useful all the way until you get to grade 12. The function of the artwork. So we look at how functional the art is. So function would be, the most functional would be things that would be designed like chairs or tables or clothing and architecture. Majority of the pictures that we study do not actually have a function. Activity 1.3 on page 49. You are going to look at Irma Stern's picture, Bora Girl, which is oil on canvas in 1945. So think about it, what was happening in South Africa in 1945, and also think about what influences you see in this picture. Okay, what is the function of the painting? Why was somebody prepared to pay 26,420,000 rand in October 2010? Why do you think it was so important that they paid that amount of money? And think about the aesthetic qualities, the prestige, the uniqueness of the work, the investment, the ownership, and the collecting instinct. Right, the context. So when you're looking at a picture, we need to know the context. What does it come from? What time period? What was going on in the world during that time? So it has to do with the social and historical background. It is important to find out as much historical background to artists and artworks as possible so that our understanding of the work is enriched.